The storm began long before Marcus understood how dangerous this planet really was. The skies of Jar split open with violent purple flashes, and every tree in the alien jungle bent like it was praying for mercy. Marcus, a human explorer stranded after a shuttle malfunction, ran through the thick brush with nothing but a torn jacket and a small survival knife. He was cold, hungry, and exhausted, but none of that mattered when he heard the cry. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It wasn't the sound of thunder. It was the sound of someone begging for help. Marcus hesitated, only for a second, then pushed through the vines. His boots sank into the wet ground, and his heart raced with fear. The cry came again, soft, frightened, and full of pain. He followed it. At the base of a glowing tree, he finally saw her. A young alien girl. No, not a girl. A young woman. Her skin was a pale blue, glowing faintly in the stormlight. Silver markings ran along her arms like fragile rivers. A heavy tree branch had fallen on her leg, pinning her to the ground. Her long silver hair was tangled with leaves, her clothes torn, and her chest rose unevenly as she struggled to breathe. Her eyes opened when Marcus stepped closer. They were large, shimmering like liquid metal and filled with fear. "Don't come closer," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Humans hurt us." Marcus raised both hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I heard someone crying. I just want to help." She looked confused. Her people were enemies of humans. They were told humans were dangerous, greedy, violent. Yet this man approached gently, carefully, like she was something fragile. The rain fell harder, slamming against the leaves. The storm roared again. Marcus knew if he left her here, she would not survive. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She blinked. "Leary, Leary," he repeated, making sure he said it gently. "I'm Marcus. I'm going to help lift this tree off you. But I need you to trust me." Leary shook her head weakly. I cannot trust humans." Marcus knelt beside her anyway. "Then trust the storm," he said quietly. "Because if we stay here, it will kill both of us." Her eyes widened at the honesty in his voice. He wasn't demanding trust. He wasn't forcing anything. He was simply telling the truth. Marcus wrapped his hands around the heavy tree limb. His fingers slipped, and his arms shook. The rain made everything slick, and he could barely get a grip. But he didn't stop. Every muscle in his body screamed as he pushed. Leary watched him, stunned. No human had ever struggled for her. No ally had ever risked their life for her. She felt her breath catch, not from pain, but from something she had never felt before. Hope. Marcus grunted and gave one final push. The limb rolled off her leg, and she gasped in relief. Her leg was badly bruised and bleeding, but at least she was free. He crouched beside her. "Can you stand?" she tried. She failed. The pain was too strong. Marcus didn't hesitate. He lifted her gently into his arms. She tensed at first, shocked by his warmth. Human skin was supposed to be cold and harsh. But Marcus felt warm, steady, solid like safety. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, holding her close against his chest as the storm hammered down on them. "I've got you." Leary's silver eyes softened. "Why?" she whispered. "Why help me?" Marcus stepped through the mud with slow, careful steps. "Because someone needed help," he answered simply. "And I was there." A strange warmth filled Leary's chest. Her people believed humans cared only for themselves. But this man held her like she mattered, like her life had value, like she wasn't an enemy. She leaned her head against him, exhausted. "Marcus," she whispered, "please don't let go." "I won't," he promised. The storm raged around them, but inside Marcus's arms, Leary felt safe for the first time in her life, and she didn't know it yet. But this single act of kindness would shake two empires. Marcus found a small cave near a cluster of glowing mushrooms. The rain was still pouring outside, but inside it was dry and quiet. He carefully lowered Leary to the ground. Her leg was swollen, her silver markings smeared with blood, and her chest rose unevenly with every breath. Marcus knew he had to act fast. He tore his jacket into strips and gently wrapped them around her wound. Leary flinched at first, unused to being touched, but she stayed still. It's cold," she whispered. "I know," Marcus said softly, "but it will help stop the bleeding. You'll be fine." She looked up at him, her large silver eyes searching. "Humans don't usually care," she murmured. "They take. They kill. Why you?" Marcus smiled gently, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "I didn't come here to fight. I came here to survive, and when I saw someone in danger, I couldn't just leave." Leary tilted her head. She had never heard anyone speak so simply, so truthfully. Her people were trained to distrust everyone outside their kind. But Marcus's voice had no lies, no hidden meaning. There was only honesty. I don't know how to repay you, she whispered, her voice weak. I am a princess. My life is valuable to everyone, and yet you saved me as if I were nothing. Marcus shook his head. You're not nothing. You're alive. That's enough. The hours passed slowly. Marcus collected water from a dripping stalactite and fed her small bites of food he had scavenged from the forest. He told her stories of Earth, of wide oceans, tall mountains, and deserts that burned like fire under the sun. Leary listened quietly, fascinated. She had read about humans, studied them in books, and yet she had never known one personally. You speak like a teacher, she said, a small smile forming. But I feel safer with you than anyone else in my life. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He wasn't used to someone relying on him like this. He had fought alone, survived alone, but now, someone trusted him completely. Night came. The storm softened into rain. Leary's breathing became uneven as she drifted into a feverish sleep. Marcus stayed awake, keeping his hand gently on her shoulder, ready to wake her if she screamed. He had never held anyone so fragile before, and it was both terrifying and comforting. At one point, she muttered in her sleep, "Do not leave." "Stay." Marcus pressed a finger gently to her hand. "I'm not leaving," he whispered. "Not now, not ever." The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds. Leary opened her eyes and saw him arranging moss around her so she would be more comfortable. "Marcus," she said softly, I thought humans only think of themselves. You are different." "I try," he said with a small grin. "Everyone has something good in them. Some just hide it better than others." For the first time, Leary felt a spark of hope. She had been running from enemies, from danger, and even from her own palace where politics had made her feel trapped and powerless. Yet here, in this damp cave, a human had given her warmth, safety, and care without expecting anything in return. She reached out tentatively and touched his arm. Marcus flinched slightly, surprised by the contact. Leary's touch was soft, almost fragile, yet it carried trust and gratitude. I feel safe," she whispered. "I haven't felt this ever." Marcus looked down at her, his heart pounding. "Good," he said. "That's all I wanted." The bond between them grew quietly. It wasn't spoken yet, not in words that could be understood by her people, but it was real. Leary leaned her head against his shoulder, and Marcus instinctively wrapped an arm around her, protecting her from the world outside the cave. Neither of them noticed the faint glow in the mushrooms, brightening as if the jungle itself recognized the moment. Outside, the storm had passed. Birds began to call. And in the quiet of that alien forest, a human and a princess shared a simple truth. Kindness could break barriers stronger than empires, and trust could be formed in the midst of fear. Leary closed her eyes and whispered, almost to herself, "If only everyone were like him." Marcus squeezed her shoulder gently. "Maybe not everyone, but one person is enough to start something." And in that moment, though neither knew the trials ahead, they both felt it, the first spark of connection that could change everything. Marcus woke early to the soft light filtering into the cave. Leary was already awake, sitting up with her legs wrapped in moss and bandages. She looked stronger than the day before, but her silver eyes still held a shadow of fear. Marcus handed her a small cup of water, and she took it with a grateful smile. Before he could say anything, a distant roar shook the jungle. Birds scattered into the sky, and the ground vibrated beneath their feet. Marcus froze, sensing the danger immediately. The roar wasn't natural, it was mechanical, powerful, and fast approaching. "Marcus, what is that?" Leary whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus looked outside. Through the opening of the cave, he saw the sky blacken with descending warships. They glinted like sharp stones against the morning light. Alien soldiers in sleek armor ran through the trees, their weapons raised, scanning every shadow. Leary's eyes widened. It's them. They are searching for me." Marcus instinctively stepped in front of her. "Stay behind me, I'll protect you." She shook her head. "I am not a child. They are after me because of my blood, my title. You are just a human. They will kill you if you try to fight them." "I don't care," Marcus said firmly. "I saved you. I won't let them hurt you now." The jungle shook again as more soldiers appeared. And then, a figure emerged from the leading ship that made Marcus's blood run cold. She was tall, regal, and terrifying. Her armor gleamed with black and silver, and her eyes burned like molten stars. The queen of the Jari Empire had arrived. Leary My daughter! The queen's voice boomed, filled with rage and panic. What has happened to you? Who touched you? Who dared? Lyri stood her ground, stepping closer to Marcus. Mother. It's okay. He saved me. The queen's gaze snapped to Marcus. Her eyes narrowed like blades. Human, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Come forward. Marcus's heart thumped loudly, but he obeyed, stepping from the cave into the open jungle. Rain still dripped from the leaves, soaking them both, but neither flinched. He knew there was no room for fear now. He could not falter. The queen stopped just a few meters away from them. She looked at Marcus as though he were a threat the size of a mountain. Explain yourself, she demanded. Why are you touching my child? Why are you alive in her presence? Lyri's voice rang out clearly, stronger than she had ever spoken before. Mother, listen to me. He didn't hurt me. He saved me. He carried me. He fed me. He stayed with me while I was dying in the storm. The queen's gaze shifted sharply to Lyri, disbelief written across her face. My child, what are you saying? Lyri stepped forward, raising her chin. I am saying, this human is not an enemy. He's the only one who cared for me. And I chose him. Marcus blinked. He didn't understand at first. Chose him? Before he could respond, Lyri's silver eyes locked on her mother's. He is my bond. My spouse. The words cut through the jungle like lightning. Marcus froze. Soldiers stopped mid-step. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. The queen's voice erupted like thunder. Why is my daughter calling you spouse, human? The force of her rage made Marcus stumble back slightly, but he kept his eyes on Lyri. She didn't waver. I didn't know, Marcus said quickly, his voice steady but humble. I only tried to save her life. I never meant to take anything from her. Lyri reached for his arm and held it gently. Mother, he did not take. He gave me life, warmth, and hope. That is what bonds us. That is what matters. The queen's face twisted in confusion, anger, and fear. She had ruled the Jari for decades, and yet she had never seen anything like this. No human had ever crossed her daughter's path, let alone earned her trust. You created a bond? The queen whispered, as if the words themselves were dangerous. Yes, Lyri said softly, but with unwavering certainty. Because he saved me when no one else could. Because he never looked at me as a weapon, a tool, or a child to control. He looked at me as... The queen's hands trembled slightly. Marcus could see the storm of emotion in her eyes, rage, fear, and the faintest trace of awe. She had to decide whether to strike him down or to see what this human had truly done, and Marcus only stood still, holding Lyri's trust as tightly as he could, knowing that one wrong move could end everything. The jungle fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause as the queen's furious gaze bore into Marcus. Soldiers shifted uneasily, unsure whether to attack or obey, and Lyri clutched Marcus's arm, steadying herself. Her silver eyes glimmered with defiance, yet fear lingered at the edges. The queen's voice was sharp and commanding, cutting through the tension. Human, explain yourself. Why are you alive in my daughter's presence? Why are you touching her? Speak. Marcus swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the queen's power pressing down on him. His chest tightened, but he kept his voice calm. Your Majesty, I only saved her life. I found her trapped in the storm. She was injured and alone. I gave her shelter and food. That is all I did. The queen's eyes narrowed. That is not enough. My daughter is my blood, the heir to the Jari Empire. Any human near her, any touch, any word, could mean death or dishonor. Tell me, human, what do you claim? Marcus shook his head quickly. I claim nothing. I never sought her as a bond. I only acted to protect her. That is all. Lyri stepped forward, raising her voice. Mother, he speaks the truth. He saved me when no one else came. He carried me hours through the storm. He never hurt me. He only gave me warmth, food, and care. That is why he is my bond. That is why I call him spouse. The queen's gaze snapped from Marcus to Lyri. My child, do you truly say this? That you have chosen him? That you have given him your bond? Lyri's eyes shimmered with tears. Yes, I have never known kindness like his. I have never trusted anyone like this. He stayed with me when I was alone and afraid. He risked his life to keep me safe. That is more than any human or alien. has ever done. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He had never expected this. He had not thought of himself as a hero. He had not thought anyone could see value in him, not like this. And yet, the princess trusted him completely. The queen's expression hardened. She studied Marcus closely, scanning for deception, for hunger, for ambition. She had learned to read the truth in eyes over centuries of ruling. Yet in Marcus's gaze, she saw none of it. Only honesty, courage, and a willingness to risk his life for another being. You speak of mercy. But a bond is not mercy, human, the queen said, her voice trembling with authority and disbelief. It is sacred. It is binding. It changes fate. Do you even understand what you have done? Marcus nodded slowly. I understand that it is sacred. I only acted out of what I thought was right. I never wanted to force anything. I only wanted to save her life. The queen's eyes flickered to Lyri, searching for the truth in her daughter's expression. Lyri's face was calm, filled with certainty, and the faintest smile touched her lips. Her hand remained lightly on Marcus's arm. She speaks honestly, Marcus added. And so do I. We did not choose lightly. We did not act with selfishness. We only acted because it was right. The queen's breath hitched, a sound almost like a whisper. Soldiers tensed, ready to obey her fury, but she did not move. The weight of her authority pressed down like a stone on the ground, but Marcus did not flinch. He stood tall, his heart pounding, ready to accept whatever judgment came. You claim to act with honor, and yet you have created a bond with a princess? The queen said finally, her voice low, almost trembling. No human has ever dared. And yet here you stand. Marcus did not step back. I did not dare for power. I dared because she was in danger. She trusted me, and I would never betray that trust. The queen's eyes softened for the first time. She touched her daughter's forehead lightly, a Jari gesture of connection, of checking her truth. Lyri leaned into the touch, her head bowed slightly, and whispered, "He is honest, mother. Believe me." The queen pulled back and looked at Marcus again. Her expression was unreadable, a storm of fury, doubt, and a grudging respect. You have done what no human could. You saved my daughter and her trust. But know this. The bond you speak of carries weight beyond life and death. You may be tested. You may be hunted. You may be cast out. Are you prepared for this? Marcus met her gaze without fear. I am. If it means keeping her safe, I will face anything. The queen studied him silently, then slowly nodded. Very well. The bond is real, and I cannot undo it. But remember this, human trust is fragile. One misstep, and it will be your life, or hers, that pays the price. Lyri's silver eyes sparkled. She looked at Marcus and whispered, "Thank you. For being here, for staying." Marcus gently held her hand. "I won't leave. Not now. Not ever." And in the quiet jungle, surrounded by soldiers and the weight of a queen's gaze, a human and an alien princess stood united against fear, against prejudice, and against the impossible odds of two worlds divided. The first step of their bond had been tested, and it had survived. The jungle was quiet now, but the tension did not fade. Marcus stood beside Lyri, his hand lightly holding hers, while the queen circled them like a predator studying its prey. Her black and silver armor gleamed under the weak sunlight that filtered through the clouds, and her eyes burned with a mixture of suspicion, fear, and an almost unspoken respect. "You claim to care for my daughter," the queen said, her voice cutting through the air. "Yet humans are not known for mercy. You are a species that conquers, that kills without thought. Why should I believe you are different?" Marcus straightened his shoulders, meeting her gaze without fear. "Because I am not here to conquer. I am not here to take. I am here because she needed help, and I could not walk away." The queen stopped in front of him, close enough that Marcus could feel the intensity of her presence. "Words are easy," she said. Actions are what bind a life to another. You carried her through the storm, yes. You gave her warmth and food. But why her? Why not any other child? Why risk your life for her, a Jari princess?" Marcus exhaled slowly, thinking carefully. "Because she was in Da. Anger, because she needed someone when no one else came. And because I couldn't leave her to die alone." The queen studied him for a long, heavy moment. The wind rustled the leaves around them, but no sound came from her lips. Marcus could feel the weight of her judgment pressing down on him, stronger than any storm or enemy he had faced. Then Lyri stepped forward. Her small hand rested on her mother's armored chest. "Mother," she said softly, "he speaks the truth. He never thought of himself. He never asked for reward or recognition. He only gave. That is why I chose him." The Queen's gaze flicked from Leary to Marcus, her eyes narrowing. "Chosen him?" she repeated, almost as if the words were dangerous. "Do you understand what you claim, human? A bond with a princess is not a game. It is a life of sacrifice, of trials, of scrutiny. You must walk a path that few can endure. Do you accept that?" Marcus felt the weight of her words, the gravity of what he was agreeing to. "I do," he said quietly but firmly. "I accept it, whatever comes. I will protect her, and I will not betray her trust." The Queen's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained sharp. "Words must be proven by deeds. Trust is fragile, and a bond can be broken by the smallest act of deceit. Tell me, human, would you risk your life not just for her safety, but for her honor? For her happiness?" Marcus looked at Leary, whose silver eyes shone with unspoken emotion. He thought of the storm, of her fear, of the small moments of trust she had placed in him. "I would," he said without hesitation. "Every moment, every breath. Her happiness is as important as her life. I will fight for both." The Queen's hand hovered near her daughter's forehead, a gesture of truth-seeing. She studied Marcus again, the silence stretching longer than any word could hold. Marcus could feel the piercing weight of her scrutiny, the centuries of wisdom and power behind her gaze. Finally the Queen spoke, her voice lower now, tinged with respect. "You are not like the others. You carry honor, even if your kind rarely shows it. You have risked everything for someone who is not your own, and yet you do not claim her as a prize. That is rare." Leary let out a small relieved sigh and pressed her forehead against Marcus's shoulder. "Mother," she whispered, "he saved me. He stayed with me. He is honest. I chose him because he showed me care no one else has." The Queen's face softened further, the hardness in her eyes melting slightly. "So it is true," she said quietly. "A bond has formed. Not from power, not from fear, but from trust and action. This human has passed the first test, not because I decree it, but because your daughter sees the truth in him." Marcus felt his chest tighten with relief, though he knew the path ahead would still be full of danger. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said sincerely. "I will not fail her." The Queen nodded slowly. "You may not fail her," she said, almost as if repeating a warning to herself. "But know this, your actions will always be watched. You may face enemies that your kind cannot imagine, and yet, if you remain true, if your heart remains steadfast, perhaps there is hope in this bond, even for a human." Leary leaned into Marcus's side, her warmth a quiet reassurance. He looked down at her and smiled gently. "Whatever comes, we will face it together," he whispered. The Queen stepped back, raising her arms slightly. Soldiers relaxed their stances, and a quiet tension lifted from the jungle. The first trial had passed. Marcus had survived the Queen's scrutiny, not by force or cunning, but by honesty, courage, and unwavering care. And as the light broke through the clouds, Leary's hand held his firmly. Two worlds, divided by fear and history, had begun a bond that could change everything, because humanity, in its simplest and strongest form, had acted with heart. The jungle was calm now, but the weight of the Queen's gaze still lingered in the air. Marcus stood beside Leary, her hand lightly pressed in his, feeling the warmth of her trust. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the storm that had brought them together, reminding him that everything had changed in just a few days. Leary looked up at him, her silver eyes shining with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Marcus," she whispered, "the bond, it cannot be broken. Once you accept it, you share everything: your life, your heart, your courage. Do you understand what it means?" Marcus nodded slowly, feeling the gravity of her words. He had seen fear in his life, hunger, war, and loneliness. But nothing had ever demanded more than this. To protect another completely. To walk beside someone through danger, loss, and hope. This was a path no human had truly walked before. "Not with someone like her. I understand," he said quietly, his voice steady. "And I choose it. I choose to be with you, Leary. Not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because I will not let you face this alone." Her eyes widened, shimmering like liquid silver. She took a small step closer and placed her forehead against his chest, trembling. You mean it?" she asked softly, almost afraid to believe it. "I do," Marcus whispered. "I swear it." The Queen watched silently, her expression still strong but softened by the honesty she saw. Soldiers shifted uneasily, sensing the shift in the air. Marcus and Leary were no longer simply human and alien. They were bound by choice, by trust, and by the courage to defy fear together. Leary let out a shaky breath and wrapped her arms around him, resting her head against his shoulder. Marcus instinctively held her close, feeling the fragile weight of her against his chest. He had carried her through the storm, but now he carried something deeper, the trust and hope of a life reborn. "Marcus," Leary whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "you've given me something no one else ever could. You've given me hope." Marcus pressed his forehead against hers. "You've given me something too," he said softly. "A reason to fight, a reason to believe that even across worlds, kindness matters. You trusted me. You chose me. That means more than anything." For a moment, the jungle seemed to breathe with them. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of creatures, even the fading sunlight seemed to recognize the bond forming between human and princess. Leary's small fingers tightened around his hand, and Marcus felt an unspoken promise pass between them. They would face whatever came next together. The queen stepped closer, her eyes still watchful but softer now. "Marcus," she said quietly, "you accept this bond fully, knowing it will test your strength, your courage, and your heart. You will be judged not by your words, but by your actions. You must honor her, protect her, and remain true, even when the world tries to tear you apart. Do you understand?" "I understand," Marcus said again, his voice firm. "I will honor her. I will protect her. I will remain true. No matter what comes, I will not abandon her." The queen's hands hovered for a moment, then she bowed slightly, a gesture almost unheard of among her kind when directed toward a human. "Then it is done," she said. "The bond is recognized. You may walk beside my daughter, human. But remember, the galaxy will not forgive weakness." Marcus nodded, feeling both relief and responsibility settle deep in his chest. He had passed the test, not by fighting, but by showing the simplest, strongest form of strength a human could possess: courage, compassion, and truth. Leary lifted her head from his shoulder, smiling softly. "Marcus," she whispered, "we will face it all together. The storms, the enemies, the impossible. We will face it and survive." He smiled back at her, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "Together," he agreed. "Whatever comes, we face it together." And in that quiet jungle, the bond was sealed. Not by laws, not by fear, not by politics, but by the undeniable truth that a human had acted with courage, kindness, and heart. Two lives, once strangers, were now intertwined. The first trials were over, but the story was only beginning. Marcus and Leary would face dangers neither had imagined. Yet the spark of trust between them burned brighter than any storm, stronger than any weapon. For the first time, a human and a Jari princess walked side by side. Not as enemies, not as strangers, but as bonded equals. And the galaxy would never forget it.